To consume or not to consume? That is the true question. My name is Moyosola Oluwalu-Okure, and we're going to dive into consumer psychology. So the first topic is going to be the definition of terms. What is consumer behavior? Consumer behavior talks about the decision processes and the physical activity that is engaged in when evaluating, acquiring, using, or disposing of goods and services in order to satisfy needs and wants. Consumer behavior is influenced by individual determinants, which are in turn influenced by external determinants. We'll talk about those individual and external determinants later. Another key term that we need to know is a consumer. Who exactly is a consumer? Well, a consumer is the person that does all of these things that I just mentioned earlier. A consumer is anyone who typically engages in one or all of the activities that we just stated. A decision process and physical activity engaged in when evaluating, acquiring, using, or disposing of goods and services. So once a person is carrying out one or all of these actions, they can be called a consumer. So now let's differentiate between a consumer and a customer. So a customer is anyone who actually purchases a product or service from a particular organization, shop, or person. So all customers are consumers, but not all consumers are customers. For example, a consumer is the one that uses, evaluates, disposes, but they may not buy the product, while a customer is the one that buys the product, but may not use, evaluate, or dispose of it. So just think of a parent buying diapers for their baby. The baby is a consumer, quite all right, but the baby is definitely not the customer because it's the adult that went to the shop to actually buy the good. Remember that consumer behavior encompasses more than just buying. It encompasses evaluating, using, and disposing of goods and services. And these three actions would surely apply even if a good or service is free. So it involves all the mental, social, emotional, and physical activities that a person engages in before, during, and after selecting, purchasing, using, and disposing commodities to satisfy their needs and desires. So there are two vital elements that are present in all consumer situations. First, we have the influence from other people on the decision process, and we have the roles that are taken on by different people. So we know from social psychology what influence is. It's the ability to change or shift or modify another person's behavior, whether consciously or unconsciously, right? So for example, the kinds of movies you watch would influence your opinions. The kinds of people you hang around influence your sense of style. So influence is very much present in consumer interactions because there are different people that are actually involved in the process of buying a good or choosing a good or evaluating or disposing of a good that would influence the process of buying, disposing, using, evaluating, and so on. So we've explained what the influence is as a vital element in consumer interactions or consumer situations. And then we have the roles that are taken up by various individuals. So first off, so you have four roles. And the first role is the initiator. So this is the person who identifies or determines that some need or want isn't being met. Imagine a mother holding the hand of their child at an amusement park, and the child says, "Mommy, I'm hungry." That child is the initiator because he or she has clearly determined that there is some need or some want that is not being met. In this context, hunger or food. The next role in all consumer situations is the role of the influencer. So the influencer, remember what we just talked about, influence, intentionally or unintentionally influences the decision to buy and use the good or the service. So if after the child says, "Mommy, I'm hungry," let's say the child is out with their mom and their aunt. If the aunt says to the mother, "Oh, there's this really cool pizza shop around the corner that we can try," that person has influenced the buying decision or the consumer behavior, because while that person may not be the person that's actually buying the food for the child, they are exerting influence on where the food is bought and even what kind of food is bought, right? Then you have the third role, which is the role of the buyer. So the buyer is the person that actually makes the purchase. So this is who we just refer to as a customer, right? This is the person that actually brings out the funds and says, oh, here's 5 naira, please give me 1 hot dog, right? Then you have the fourth role, which is the role of the user. So the user is the person that actually uses or consumes the product or service. That's pretty self-explanatory. So quick recap, we've described consumer behavior as the decision process and physical activity that's engaged in when evaluating, acquiring, using, or disposing goods and services. We mentioned briefly that consumer behavior is influenced by individual and external determinants, which we will talk about later. We defined the consumer as the person who engages in any one or all of the activities that I just listed, and we talked about how a consumer could be a customer, but not every customer is a consumer. We also mentioned how consumer behavior can apply to free goods and services, and we also just talked about the 2 vital elements that come up in all consumer situations: influence and the 4 roles that individuals take in the consumption process or in the decision-making process. So consumer behavior encompasses the actual buyer, his act of buying, and the influence that is exerted on this decision process, and the different roles that are taken up or played by different individuals or people. So now let's look at the scope of consumer behavior. Remember that we just defined consumer behavior as something, and we also mentioned that consumer behavior is influenced by individual determinants and external determinants. So these individual and external determinants are 2 broad areas under which we can study consumer behavior. But the first broad area is what we just talked about. It is the decision process. So you can say that the scope of consumer behavior can be broken down into 3 broad areas of study that are all 3 broad areas of study that all interact with each other. The first is the decision process, which is influenced by the individual determinants, which are then influenced by the external determinants. It's not sequential as such, but that is just the kind of concentric circle in which these 3 broad areas of study operate.